The road to Seattle unfurled before me like a map of my past, each curve and street sign pulling me deeper into memories I'd tried to leave behind. My name is Emily Harper, 35 years old, and it's been 6 long years since I last crossed the threshold of my childhood home. As I gripped the steering wheel of my rental car, a sleek, quiet hybrid that hummed with the confidence I'd fought to earn me heart, thrummed with a mix of anticipation and dread. Now, as I drove past the twinkling storefronts of Capitol Hill, I carried a secret that felt both heavy and liberating. In the 6 years since I'd left, I'd co-founded NovaTech, a company using artificial intelligence to revolutionize education for students with learning differences. What started as a dream in a cramped Silicon Valley apartment had grown into an enterprise valued at $80 million, with partnerships spanning school districts in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. My podcast, Code and Courage, had become a beacon for thousands, sharing stories of women in tech who'd overcome doubt and dismissal to build their own paths. I'd mentored young women through a nonprofit I helped establish, guiding them through the same challenges I'd faced. But my family? They knew none of this. Our contact had dwindled to holiday texts and perfunctory calls, their questions about my life vague and disinterested. "Still doing that tech stuff?" Dad would ask, already moving on to David's latest surgical breakthrough or Sophia's gallery opening. I'd stopped offering details, not out of secrecy, but because their apathy cut deeper than I could admit. This Christmas was different, though. I wasn't returning out of obligation or a desperate need for approval. I was here because of Grandma Margaret, the one person who'd always seen me. Her letter, written in her elegant cursive on lavender stationery, had arrived in October, her words piercing through the walls I'd built. "Emmy, my heart aches without you here," she'd written. "Come home for Christmas. Life's too short for distance." That nickname, Emmy, carried me back to summers spent in her garden, where she'd listened to my dreams of coding while we planted tulips. She'd sent cards throughout my years at MIT, called to celebrate my first podcast episode, and never once compared me to my siblings. Her love was unconditional, a rare gift in the Harper household, and it was for her that I'd packed my bags and boarded a flight from San Francisco. As I pulled into the driveway, the house glowed with the same festive warmth I remembered, but it felt like a stage set for a play I no longer knew the lines to. I stepped out of the car, my cashmere coat and tailored jeans, a quiet testament to the woman I'd become, a CEO who commanded boardrooms, a mentor who inspired others, a creator who solved problems with code. Yet, as I approached the door, my heart raced with the old fear of being overlooked. Mom opened it before I could knock, her eyes sweeping over me like a critic assessing a painting. "Emily, you're here. You look thinner. Something's different." Her tone was a familiar blend of curiosity and critique, never quite landing on approval. Dad appeared behind her, offering a stiff handshake. "Good to see you, kid. Still tinkering with those computers?" His chuckle was a knife, sharp with the assumption that I was still the girl he'd dismissed years ago. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine, the Christmas tree sparkling in the living room like a beacon of tradition. David was there with his wife, Claire, and their 2 kids, Lily and Max, who barely glanced at me. Sophia arrived moments later, her fiancé, Ethan, at her side, his arm around her like she was a prize. Hugs were exchanged, but they felt like formalities, the warmth surface level. Lily, my 6-year-old niece, squinted at me as if trying to place a stranger, and Max, 4, hid behind David's leg. "They're just shy," David said. But the truth hung heavy. I was a ghost in their world, a relative they barely knew. Still, I clung to a flicker of hope as I carried my suitcase upstairs. This was family, after all. Maybe this Christmas could rewrite our story. Maybe they'd finally see the woman I'd become, not the girl they'd ignored. But when I opened the door to my old bedroom, my hope faltered. It was a storage room now, piled with boxes of Christmas decorations and old furniture, my posters gone, my high school awards tucked away in a closet. David's room, I noticed later, was still a shrine to his football days, and Sophia's was updated but intact, a space she could claim. Mine had been erased, as if I'd never belonged. The streets of Capitol Hill, bathed in the soft glow of Christmas lights strung across lampposts and evergreen wreaths adorning doorways, felt both achingly familiar and strangely foreign. I wasn't the same Emily who'd left Seattle all those years ago, a shy girl desperate for her family's approval. I set my suitcase down, my fingers brushing the prototype I'd brought for Grandma wearable device to monitor her health, a gift born of love and innovation. As I unpacked, I tucked the Forbes magazine into my bag, unsure if I'd share it. It was proof of my empire. But more than that, it was proof of me, a woman who'd built a life on her own terms, ready to face a family that might never see her light. I'd built something extraordinary, an empire forged in code and courage, and yet, as I drove closer to the house that had shaped me, my stomach knotted with the fear that I'd still be invisible to those who were supposed to know me best. The Harper family home loomed ahead, a craftsman-style beacon with its cedar siding and meticulously arranged Christmas lights, a tradition my father, Richard, had upheld for 2 decades. The Space Needle glittered in the distance, a festive reminder of childhood winters spent wandering Pike Place Market with my grandmother, Margaret, her hand warm in mine as she bought me hot cocoa and whispered stories of her youth. Those memories were a lifeline now, grounding me as I faced the prospect of reuniting with a family that had always placed me in the shadows. My parents, Laura and Richard, were pillars of success. Mom, a marketing director who commanded boardrooms with her sharp wit, and Dad, a corporate lawyer whose name carried weight in Seattle's legal circles. They'd built a household where love was a currency earned through achievements, and in that economy, my older brother David and younger sister Sophia were the millionaires. David, now a renowned surgeon, had been the golden boy, his straight-A report cards and football trophies celebrated like national victories. Sophia, the family's darling, painted canvases that hung in local galleries by 18, her social charm lighting up every room she entered. And then there was me, Emily, the middle child, forever caught in the crossfire of their brilliance, my own light dimmed by their indifference. I'd always been the odd one out, the girl who spent hours in her room coding instead of chasing accolades that fit my parents' definition of success. In middle school, I'd discovered the magic of programming, crafting simple games in the computer lab while other kids played soccer or gossiped at the mall. I'd show my creations to Dad, my eyes bright with pride, only to watch his gaze slide away after a cursory glance. "That's nice, Emily, but have you finished your algebra homework?" he'd say, as if my passion was a distraction from real work. Mom wasn't much better, her suggestions laced with concern that barely masked disappointment. "Why don't you join Sophia's art classes? You're always alone with those machines." To them, my love for technology was a quirk, not a calling, even as the world around us, Seattle in the early 2000s, buzzing with Microsoft's rise proved otherwise. The Harper household was a world governed by a single, unspoken rule. Your value was measured by what you achieved. Growing up in that Seattle craftsman-style home, with its polished oak floors and the faint scent of Mom's lavender candles, I learned early that love was a prize to be won, not freely given. That moment wasn't isolated. It was a pattern woven into the fabric of our family. When I was 15, I entered a national coding competition and placed in the top 10, earning a scholarship to a summer tech camp. I showed Mom the acceptance letter, my hands trembling with excitement. She skimmed it, then handed it back. "That's great, honey, but don't let it distract you from your grades. David's applying to Ivy Leagues, you know." The comparison stung, not because I envied David, but because it made me invisible. My triumphs, no matter how hard-earned, were footnotes in the Harper family saga, overshadowed by David's academic brilliance and Sophia's artistic flair. Even small moments, like family game nights, reinforced the hierarchy. David's strategic wins at Scrabble were celebrated. Sophia's creative storytelling during charades drew laughter, but my quiet focus-solving puzzles or suggesting a new board game op was met with shrugs or a quick change of subject. The deepest wound came my senior year of high school. I'd been accepted to MIT with a partial scholarship for computer science, a dream I'd chased through late nights and endless lines of code. It was 2008, and tech was booming. Silicon Valley was the future, and I wanted to be part of it. At dinner, I shared the news, my voice steady despite the butterflies in my stomach. "MIT offered me a scholarship," I said, waiting for their pride to match mine. Dad paused, fork midair, and frowned. "MIT's expensive, Emily. The University of Washington has a decent computer program. Why go into debt for something you could do here?" Mom nodded, adding, "It's a big risk, honey. Maybe focus on something practical, like Sophia's art degree. She's already got gallery interest." The table fell silent, and I felt my dreams shrink under their scrutiny. They didn't see MIT as an achievement. They saw it as a burden, a choice that didn't align with their vision of success. I went to MIT anyway, cobbling together loans, grants, and part-time jobs to make it work. Those 4 years were a revelation. Surrounded by peers who saw code as art and innovation as purpose, I found my place. Professors praised my algorithms, classmates collaborated on projects that pushed boundaries, and for the first time, I wasn't defined by my siblings' shadows. But the distance from Seattle wasn't just geographic, it was emotional. When I called home, Mom's questions were perfunctory. "How's school?" Dad's were dismissive. "Still messing with computers?" I'd share snippets of my life, a hackathon win, a summer internship. But their responses were vague, their attention already drifting to David's medical school applications or Sophia's latest art show. By the time I graduated, our calls had dwindled to birthdays and holidays, each one a reminder that I was an afterthought. What my family didn't know, what I hadn't told them, was that I'd carried my passion into something extraordinary. After MIT, I moved to Silicon Valley and co-founded NovaTech, a company using AI to create personalized learning plans for students with dyslexia, ADHD, and other challenges. We started with 2 laptops and a vision, working out of a cramped apartment in Palo Alto. By year 3, we'd partnered with school districts across the country. By year 6, NovaTech was valued at $80 million, with acquisition offers stacking up. I'd also launched Code and Courage, a podcast sharing stories of women in tech, including my own journey of overcoming doubt. Thousands of listeners emailed me, saying my words gave them strength. I'd built a chosen family in Silicon Valley, friends like Claire, my podcast co-producer, who celebrated my victories and held me through setbacks. But in Seattle, I was still the middle child, the one whose passion for computers was a footnote, not a headline. My parents, Laura and Richard, were titans in their fields. Mom, a marketing director who could sell ice to a glacier, and Dad, a corporate lawyer whose name opened doors across the Pacific Northwest. They'd built a family where success was the only currency that mattered. And in that economy, my older brother, David, and younger sister, Sophia, were the undisputed heirs. David, with his perfect grades and football heroics, was the golden child, destined for greatness before he could drive. As I prepared to return home for Christmas, prompted by Grandma Margaret's heartfelt letter, I felt the weight of that hierarchy pressing down again. Grandma was the exception, the one who'd always seen me. She'd sent me a card after my first podcast episode. Her cursive, shaky but warm. "Emmy, you're changing lives. I'm so proud." Her belief was why I was driving back to Seattle, why I'd packed a prototype of a health monitoring wearable for her, a gift born of love and innovation. But the rest of my family? They didn't know about NovaTech, the podcast, or the woman I'd become. As I neared the house, the Christmas lights glowing like a beacon, I wondered if they'd ever see Minot, the girl they'd overlooked, but the woman who'd built an empire on her own terms. The thought both terrified and emboldened me, a spark of hope flickering against the fear that the Harper hierarchy would never change. Sophia, the baby of the family, wove her artistic talent and effortless charm into a crown that sparkled at every family gathering. And me? I was Emily, the middle child, forever scrambling for a foothold in a hierarchy that never had a place for me. From as early as I can remember, our home was a stage where accomplishments were applauded, and anything less was quietly dismissed. Dinner conversations were like press conferences for David and Sophia. Dad would beam as David recounted his latest debate team victory or his plans for medical school, already mapped out by 16. Mom would hang on Sophia's every word about her latest painting or her role as the lead in the school play, her pride as bright as the chandelier above our dining table. I'd sit there, fork in hand, waiting for a gap to share my own small victories, a coding project that won a school competition, a website I'd built for the local library. But those gaps rarely came. When I did speak, Mom's smile would tighten and Dad's eyes would drift to his plate. "That's nice, Emily," Mom would say, her tone polite but distant. "But have you thought about joining Sophia's art club? It might help you connect with people." The subtext was clear. My passion for coding wasn't real achievement. It was a solitary hobby, a quirk that didn't fit the Harper mold. I found solace in the computer lab at school, a quiet sanctuary where lines of code became my language. In 7th grade, I built an app to help visually impaired students navigate our school's clunky website, pouring weeks into perfecting it. I was 13, buzzing with pride, when I invited my parents to the school's tech fair to see my presentation. I stood by my poster, heart pounding, scanning the crowd for their faces. They never showed. David had a football game, and Sophia's art class was hosting a showcase. Later, at dinner, Mom mentioned the game in glowing detail, and Dad asked Sophia about her watercolor technique. My app, which won first place, didn't come up. I tried to share, my voice small but hopeful. "I won the tech fair today," I said, clutching my ribbon. Dad glanced up, nodded, and said, "Good job, Emily. Did you finish your science homework?" The ribbon felt heavy in my hand, its shine dulled by their indifference. Leaving Seattle for MIT was like stepping out of a fog into a world where I could finally see myself clearly. The Harper household, with its relentless focus on achievements that fit my parents' narrow definition of success, had left me feeling like a shadow, always trailing behind my brother David's brilliance and my sister Sophia's charm. But NovaTech was only part of my journey. I'd also launched Code and Courage, a podcast born from late-night conversations with my friend Claire, who'd become my rock in Silicon Valley. The podcast shared stories of women in tech, women like me who'd been underestimated, dismissed, or told their dreams were impractical. I poured my heart into every episode, recounting my own struggles with the Harper hierarchy, the sting of being overlooked, and the triumph of building something meaningful. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of listeners emailed me, sharing how my words gave them the strength to keep going. A high school girl in Texas wrote that she'd joined her school's coding club because of an episode. A single mom in Ohio said she'd enrolled in a tech boot camp after hearing my story. The podcast wasn't just a platform, it was a community, a reminder that I wasn't alone in my fight to be seen. In Silicon Valley, I found a chosen family, friends like Claire, who co-produced Code and Courage and celebrated every milestone, from our first major contract to my Forbes cover feature. I'd also co-founded a nonprofit to mentor young women in tech, guiding them through the challenges of a male-dominated industry. We hosted workshops, coding camps, and scholarships, helping girls like the one I'd been eager but doubted find their footing. These connections, these moments of impact, were my true wealth, more valuable than any dollar figure attached to NovaTech. They were proof that I'd built something bigger than a company. I'd built a life that mattered. Back in Seattle, my family knew none of this. Our contact had faded to holiday texts and brief, stilted calls. "Still doing that tech stuff?" Dad would ask, his tone implying it was a phase I'd outgrow. Mom sent birthday cards but never asked about my work, her attention fixed on David's surgical breakthroughs or Sophia's gallery openings. I stopped sharing details, not because I wanted to hide, but because their disinterest was a wound that never healed. When I tried to tell them about a hackathon win or a new partnership, their eyes would glaze over, the conversation shifting to Sophia's latest painting or David's hospital board meeting. I wanted them to see me for who I was, not what I'd achieved, but their silence made it clear. To them, I was still the girl tinkering with computers, not a woman reshaping education. As I prepared to return to Seattle for Christmas, prompted by Grandma Margaret's heartfelt letter, I felt the weight of that disconnect. Grandma was the exception, the one who'd always seen my spark. She'd sent me a card after my first podcast episode, her cursive shaky but warm. "Emmy, you're changing lives." I'm so proud. Her belief was why I'd packed a prototype for her wearable device to monitor her health, designed with her in mind. It was more than a gift. It was a thank you for seeing me when no one else did. I also tucked a copy of Forbes into my suitcase, my face on the cover under the headline, AI's Education Revolutionaries. I wasn't sure if I'd share it, but it felt like a shield, proof of the empire I'd built in a world that hadn't expected me to succeed. The drive to Seattle was a journey through time, each mile stirring memories of a girl who'd felt invisible. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was a CEO, a mentor, a voice for thousands. I'd built NovaTech from a dream into a force for change, helping students across the country find their potential. I'd created Code and Courage to lift others up, to show them they could defy the odds. I'd found a community that valued me, not for what I achieved, but for who I was. As I neared the Harper house, the Christmas lights glowing against the winter sky, I felt a mix of fear and resolve. My family didn't know the woman I'd become, but I was ready to face them, not to prove my worth, but to claim it. This Christmas, I wasn't just returning home. I was bringing my empire with me, ready to step into the light, whether they saw it or not. But in Cambridge, Massachusetts, surrounded by the hum of innovation and the click of keyboards, I found a place where my passion for coding wasn't just tolerated, it was celebrated. Those 4 years were a lifeline, a chance to rebuild myself from the ground up, and they set the stage for everything I would become. By the time I moved to Silicon Valley, I wasn't just chasing a career. I was forging an empire, one line of code at a time, determined to prove to myself, if no one else, that I was more than the invisible middle child of the Harper family. MIT was a revelation. The campus buzzed with dreamers like me, students who saw technology as a canvas for creativity and change. I threw myself into computer science, spending late nights debugging algorithms and early mornings sketching out ideas for apps that could solve real problems. To afford tuition, I worked as a barista in a bustling Cambridge cafe, the scent of espresso clinging to my clothes as I balanced shifts with study sessions. I tutored freshmen in coding, finding joy in watching their eyes light up when a program finally ran smoothly. Every dollar I earned, every late-night study session, was a step toward independence. A declaration that I didn't need my family's validation to chase my dreams. My professors saw potential in me, praising my innovative approaches to machine learning. My classmates became collaborators, staying up with me during hackathons to build prototypes that pushed boundaries. For the first time, I wasn't defined by David's medical ambitions or Sophia's artistic flair. I was Emily Harper, a coder with a vision, a woman who belonged. When graduation came, I had offers from tech giants in Boston and Seattle, but I chose a riskier path. Silicon Valley. I wanted to be where innovation thrived, where the air crackled with possibility. With 2 college friends, I co-founded NovaTech in a cramped Palo Alto apartment. Our office, a folding table surrounded by takeout containers and laptops. Our mission was personal, to using artificial intelligence to create personalized learning plans for students with dyslexia, ADHD, and other learning differences. I'd seen friends at MIT struggle with traditional education systems, their brilliance overlooked because they didn't fit the mold. I wanted NovaTech to be a bridge, helping every student shine. We started small, piloting our platform with a single school district in Oakland. The feedback was, electric teachers saw students who'd once been disengaged now thriving, their confidence growing with every tailored lesson. By year 3, we'd signed contracts with districts in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. By year 6, NovaTech was valued at $80 million, with acquisition offers arriving weekly from companies eager to buy our technology. The letter arrived in October, its lavender envelope a soft contrast to the sleek, sterile aesthetic of my Silicon Valley apartment. My grandmother, Margaret's handwriting, elegant but slightly tremulous with age, spelled out my name Emmy, the nickname she'd given me as a child, the one that always made me feel seen. "My heart aches without you here," she wrote, her words weaving a thread of warmth through the years of distance. "Come home for Christmas, Emmy. Life's too short to stay away." The flight from San Francisco to Seattle was a quiet prelude, the hum of the plane, a contrast to the storm in my chest. As I landed and picked up my rental car, a sleek hybrid that mirrored the confidence I'd earned, I drove through Capitol Hill, the streets aglow with Christmas lights. The Space Needle loomed in the distance, a festive sentinel that stirred memories of childhood winters with Grandma, her stories of Seattle's history warming me as we sipped hot cocoa at Pike Place Market. Those moments were a refuge from the Harper household, where my coding was dismissed as a distraction. Now, as I neared the family home, its craftsman facade unchanged, I felt the weight of those years. The Christmas lights, hung in Dad's precise pattern, glowed like a promise of tradition. But I knew the warmth of the house was selective, reserved for those who fit its mold. I parked in the driveway, my boots crunching on the frosty gravel, and took a deep breath. My cashmere coat and tailored jeans weren't meant to flaunt success, but reflected the woman I'd become, a CEO who led with vision, a mentor who lifted others up. Yet, as I approached the door, my heart raced with the old fear of being unseen. Mom opened it before I could knock, her eyes scanning me like a critic assessing a canvas. "Emily, you're here. You look thinner. Something's different." Her tone, a mix of curiosity and critique, was as familiar as the cedar siding behind her. Dad appeared, offering a stiff handshake. "Good to see you, kid. Still tinkering with those computers?" His chuckle cut like a blade, assuming I was still the girl he'd dismissed years ago. Inside, the house smelled of cinnamon and pine, the Christmas tree sparkling in the living room. David was there with his wife, Claire, and their kids, Lily and Max, who barely glanced at me. Sophia arrived with her fiancé, Ethan, their entrance a flurry of charm. Hugs were exchanged, but they felt rehearsed, the warmth stopping short of genuine. As I carried my suitcase upstairs, I clung to Grandma's letter, her words a shield against the familiar sting of being overlooked. My old bedroom stopped me cold. It was a storage room now, piled with boxes of Christmas decorations and old furniture, my posters gone, my high school awards buried in a closet. David's room, I noticed later, was a shrine to his football days, and Sophia's was updated but intact, a space she could still claim. Mine had been erased, a silent confirmation that I'd never truly belonged. I set my suitcase down, my fingers brushing the prototype for Grandma. It was more than a device. It was a piece of my heart, a way to say thank you for seeing me when no one else did. The Forbes magazine stayed in my bag, a quiet reminder of the empire I'd built. NovaTech, the podcast, the nonprofit mentoring young women in tech. I wasn't sure if I'd share it, but it felt like armor, proof of the woman I'd become. Grandma Margaret's call had brought me here. Not just to Seattle, but to a crossroads. I was here for her, for the woman who'd always seen my worth, who'd called me Emmy and believed in my dreams. But I was also here for myself, to face the family that had shaped me, and to stand in the truth of who I was. As I unpacked, the house humming with the sounds of family below, I felt a spark of hope flicker against the fear. Maybe this Christmas could be different. Maybe, with Grandma's love as my anchor, I could finally step out of the shadows and into the light, whether my family saw me or not. I sat at my kitchen counter, the San Francisco skyline glittering through the window, and felt a pull I couldn't ignore. Grandma Margaret was the one person in the Harper family who'd always believed in me, who'd never measured my worth by the yardstick of achievements that defined our Seattle household. Her letter wasn't just an invitation. It was a lifeline, a reminder of the love that had anchored me through years of feeling invisible. For her, I would return to the house where I'd always been the overlooked middle child, carrying with me the empire I'd built, and the hope, fragile but persistent, that this Christmas might rewrite my story. Growing up in the Harper family, love was a prize earned through accolades, and I'd rarely made the podium. My parents, Laura and Richard, were giants in their world's mom, a marketing director who could spin any campaign into gold. Dad, a corporate lawyer whose name carried weight in Seattle's legal circles. My older brother David was their golden boy, his path to surgical stardom paved with perfect grades and football trophies. My younger sister, Sophia, was the family's darling, her paintings gracing local galleries by 18, her charm a magnet for attention. I was Emily, the middle child, whose passion for coding was dismissed as a quirky hobby, not a legacy worth celebrating. While David and Sophia basked in the glow of our parents' pride, I was the shadow. My victories in coding competitions met with polite nods or outright indifference. But Grandma Margaret was different. She'd sit with me in her garden, her hands dusted with soil, listening as I explained my latest program with the patience of someone who saw my spark. She sent me cards during my years at MIT, called to cheer my first podcast episode, and never once compared me to my siblings. Her love was a beacon, guiding me back to Seattle now. As I packed for the trip, I felt a tangle of emotions: excitement to see Grandma, dread at facing the family's familiar hierarchy, and a quiet resolve to stand in my truth. I tucked a small box into my suitcase, a prototype I designed at NovaTech, my company valued at $80 million. It was a wearable device to monitor heart rate and alert doctors if needed, created with Grandma in mind. Her health had been fragile lately, and I wanted her to feel safe, to know I'd been thinking of her. I also slipped a copy of Forbes into my bag, my face on the cover under the headline, AI's Education Revolutionaries. NovaTech, built from a dream in a Palo Alto apartment, used AI to personalize learning for students with dyslexia and ADHD, transforming lives across school districts in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. My podcast, Code and Courage, shared stories of women in tech, including my own, reaching thousands who found strength in my words. But my family knew none of this. Our contact had dwindled to holiday texts, their questions about my life vague and fleeting. Grandma's letter changed that, pulling me back to the house where I'd once felt erased. Stepping into the Harper family home in Seattle was like walking into a time capsule, where the scent of cinnamon and pine mingled with the weight of old expectations. The Christmas lights twinkled outside, casting a warm glow on the craftsman-style facade. But inside, the air felt heavy with the familiar hierarchy that had always left me on the margins. Upstairs, the blow was sharper. My old bedroom, once a sanctuary where I'd coded late into the night, was now a storage room, cluttered with boxes of Christmas decorations, old files, and dusty furniture. My posters of tech pioneers were gone, my high school coding awards buried in a closet. I opened a box labeled Emily's Stuff, and found a faded ribbon from a middle school tech fair, the one I'd won for an app helping visually impaired students. I'd been so proud, but my parents hadn't come to the presentation. David had a game, Sophia an art show. David's room, I noticed later, was a shrine to his football days, trophies gleaming on shelves. Sophia's was updated but intact, her paintings still on the walls. My space had been erased, a silent confirmation that I'd never truly belonged. I set my suitcase down, my fingers brushing the prototype I'd brought for Grandma Margaretta wearable health monitor, a gift born of love. The Forbes magazine, with my face on the cover, stayed in my bag, its weight a reminder of the empire I'd built, unseen by those who should have known me best. Dinner was a painful echo of my childhood. We gathered around the oak dining table, the same one that had witnessed years of Harper dynamics. Mom served her signature roast, tailored to everyone's preferences, David's favorite potatoes, Sophia's vegetable medley, even Claire's gluten-free options. I tried to join the conversation, my voice tentative but hopeful. I've been working on some exciting projects. I started, thinking of NovaTech's latest partnership with the Chicago School District. Mom cut in, passing the salt. Oh, that's nice, Emily. Sophia, tell us about your wedding plans. The venue sounds stunning. The table pivoted to Sophia's vision of a waterfront ceremony, and my words dissolved into the clink of silverware. Later, I tried again, mentioning my podcast, Code and Courage. Dad glanced at his watch, then turned to David. Speaking of work, how's the new surgical wing coming along? My voice faded, drowned by David's detailed response, and I was 14 again, my coding wins swallowed by the family's indifference. The oversights piled up, each one a small cut. Mom set the table for 6, forgetting me until I pointed it out. Oh, force of habit, she laughed, as if my absence from their daily lives excused the mistake. During dessert, she served my least favorite dish, green bean casserole, which I'd disliked since childhood for its texture. Still picky, Emily? She sighed, as if my preferences were a flaw she'd forgotten. I smiled, declining politely, but the message was clear. I wasn't worth remembering. Later in the kitchen, I tried to connect with Sophia, washing dishes side by side. How's your tech job going? She asked, the first to show interest. I seized the moment, starting to explain NovaTech's impact, but Mom interrupted. Emily, you're rinsing those plates wrong. You'll clog the disposal. Her tone was sharp, laced with the old assumption that I couldn't get anything right, not even housework. As I unpacked in the storage room that night, the weight of being unseen pressed down. I found a photo in the closet, tucked in a box with my old awards, a picture of me at 12, holding my first coding trophy, Grandma Margaret beaming beside me. She'd been there, clapping louder than anyone, while my parents were at David's game. I called my friend Claire in Silicon Valley, my voice thick with frustration. They haven't changed, I said, sitting on the bed piled with coats. I'm still invisible. Claire's voice was steady, a lifeline across the miles. You're not invisible, Emily. You're a force. You're here for Grandma, not their approval. Her words grounded me, reminding me of the life I'd built, NovaTech, my podcast, the nonprofit mentoring young women in tech. I wasn't the girl who'd left Seattle 6 years ago, desperate for a place at the table. I was a woman who'd carved her own. I was Emily Harper, 35, a woman who'd built an $80 million tech empire in Silicon Valley. Yet here, in the house where I'd grown up, I was still the overlooked middle child, invisible in a family that prized achievements I'd never been allowed to claim. Lying awake, the house quiet except for the hum of holiday anticipation, I felt a shift. The pain of being overlooked was real, but it didn't define me anymore. I was here for Grandma Margaret, whose love had called me back, and for myself, to stand in the truth of who I'd become. The prototype for her, the Forbes cover, the empire I'd built, they were pieces of a life I was proud of, whether my family saw it or not. As I drifted to sleep, the Christmas lights casting soft shadows through the window, I held onto a fragile hope. Maybe this Christmas could be different, not because my family would change, but because I had. As I carried my suitcase up the creaking stairs, Grandma Margaret's letter tucked in my pocket like a talisman, I braced myself for the sting of being unseen, hoping against the weight of memory that this Christmas might carve a new place for me in the Harper story. The house was alive with the chaos of family. My parents, Laura and Richard, moved with the practiced ease of hosts who'd perfected the art of holiday gatherings. Mom, a marketing director whose sharp wit commanded attention, bustled in the kitchen, her apron dusted with flour. Dad, a corporate lawyer with a presence that filled rooms, stood by the fireplace, adjusting the same Christmas lights he'd hung for 20 years. My older brother, David, now a celebrated surgeon, lounged in the living room with his wife, Claire, and their kids, Lily and Max, who darted around the Christmas tree. My younger sister, Sophia, arrived with her fiancé, Ethan, her laughter bright as she showed off her engagement ring. The scene was festive, a postcard of holiday warmth, but beneath it ran the same current that had always pushed me to the sidelines. In the Harper household, love was earned through accolades, and David's medical triumphs and Sophia's artistic brilliance were the gold standard. My passion for coding, my quiet hours building digital worlds, had never measured up. The first sting came quickly. Mom greeted me at the door, her eyes sweeping over my cashmere coat and tailored jeans. "Emily, you're here. You look thinner? Something's different." Her tone was a familiar mix of curiosity and critique, stopping short of genuine warmth. Dad's handshake was stiff, his chuckle sharp as he said, "Good to see you, kid. Still tinkering with those computers?" The word tinkering landed like a dismissal, as if my work at NovaTech company revolutionizing education with AI was a hobby, not a legacy. David offered a nod, his kids barely glancing at me. Lily, 6, squinted as if trying to place me, and Max, 4, hid behind Claire's leg. "They're just shy," David said, but the truth was heavier. I was a stranger, a ghost in their world. Sophia's hug was warm but brief, her attention already on Ethan's charming anecdotes. The room buzzed with chatter, but none of it included me, and I felt the old ache of invisibility settle in. The Harper family Christmas morning unfolded like a well-rehearsed play, every gesture and tradition polished by decades of repetition. In the Seattle craftsman-style home, the living room glowed with the warmth of a crackling fireplace, the Christmas tree sparkling with ornaments that held stories of my childhood. The scent of Mom's special hot chocolate filled the air, and the soft hum of holiday music drifted from Dad's new speaker system. Not a single package, card, or token. In a room filled with people who shared my blood, not one had thought to include me in the tradition, at the heart of our gathering. The silence stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, as the absence became undeniable. Lily, with a child's unfiltered honesty, broke the quiet. "Didn't Aunt Emily get any presents?" she asked, her small voice slicing through the festive hum. The room froze. All eyes turned to me, a mix of embarrassment, discomfort, and most painfully resignation. Mom laughed, a brittle sound, and waved a hand. "Oh, we forgot you were coming until the last minute, Emily. After 6 years away, we weren't sure you'd make it." Dad cleared his throat, his tone dismissive. "The store's open tomorrow. We'll pick something up then." My aunt, sensing the awkwardness, rummaged in her purse and offered a generic scented candle from a white elephant exchange, the price tag still attached. "You're welcome to this, Emily," she said, her pity sharp as a blade. I declined softly, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Thank you, but that's not necessary." The moment passed as quickly as it came. Mom jumped up, her voice overly bright. "Who's ready for breakfast? I've got my French toast casserole." The family surged toward the dining room, clutching their new treasures, the conversation shifting to holiday plans and favorite gifts. No apologies, no concern, just the familiar pattern of overlooking Emily. I stayed on the window bench, the cold glass pressing against my shoulder, letting the truth sink in. This wasn't about forgotten gifts or materialism. It was about being erased, about being so thoroughly absent from their thoughts that not even a card had been spared. After 6 years of building NovaTech, of mentoring young women, of sharing my story on code and courage, I'd returned to find I hadn't been missed enough to warrant a place in their tradition. The pain was raw, a wound reopened from childhood. I remembered a Christmas when I was 12, when I'd spent weeks coding a digital holiday card for the family, complete with animated snowflakes. I'd presented it proudly, only for Dad to nod and say, "Cute, Emily. Now help clear the table." That girl had hoped for recognition. This woman knew better. I thought of Grandma Margaret, whose love had called me back, and the prototype I'd brought for Hera, health monitoring wearable, a gift born of care. I thought of the Forbes cover in my bag, proof of an empire my family didn't know existed. The exclusion hurt, but it also clarified something I'd always sensed. I was an outsider in my own family, my worth tied to a hierarchy that had never included me. As I joined the family for breakfast, the chatter swirling around me, I felt a shift. The pain didn't vanish, but it didn't own me. I'd built a life in Silicon Valley NovaTech, my podcast, my chosen family with friends like Claire who saw me for who I was. I was here for Grandma, for myself, not for a validation this family couldn't give. The giftless Christmas was a wound, but it was also a mirror, reflecting a truth I could no longer ignore. I wasn't invisible, I was radiant, a woman who'd forged her own path. As I sat at the table, the prototype and Forbes cover waiting upstairs, I knew the moment to claim my truth was coming, not to prove my worth, but to stand in it, whether they saw me or not. My parents, Laura and Richard, presided over the scene with practiced ease, while my brother David, his wife Claire, and their kids, Lily and Max, buzzed with excitement. My sister Sophia, radiant beside her fiancé Ethan, added her laughter to the festive chaos. But beneath the postcard-perfect holiday, a familiar ache pulsed in my chest. I was Emily Harper, 35, a woman who'd built an $80 million tech empire in Silicon Valley. Yet here, in the house where I'd grown up, I remained invisible, a ghost in a family that had never seen my light. As we gathered for the gift exchange, a tradition that had always crystallized the Harper hierarchy, I braced for the possibility of being overlooked, but nothing prepared me for the raw pain of being erased entirely. Christmas morning in the Harper household followed a sacred rhythm. By 8, we were all in the living room, still in pajamas, clutching mugs of hot chocolate as the kids vibrated with anticipation near the tree. Dad, wearing his annual Santa hat, the one whimsical touch he allowed himself, took his place beside the mountain of wrapped presents, his reading glasses perched on his nose. "Let's see what Santa brought us," he announced, his voice warm with tradition. The gift distribution was an orchestrated dance, moving from youngest to oldest, with multiple rounds until every package was claimed. I sat on the window bench, slightly apart from the main circle, my heart a mix of hope and dread. I'd brought gifts for everyone, carefully chosen to reflect their lives, tucked away in my suitcase for the right moment. But, as the pile of presents dwindled, a sinking feeling grew in my chest. Would there be something for me, a sign that I belonged? The kids went first, their joy infectious. Max, 4, tore into a box revealing a child-sized electric truck, his squeals filling the room. Lily, 6, unwrapped a dollhouse complete with tiny furniture, her eyes wide with delight. Their piles, Gru toys, books, clothes each gift, met with cheers. Sophia was next, her laughter bright as she opened a designer handbag from Mom and Dad. "To match your engagement ring, darling," Mom said. Ethan received a leather briefcase and premium whiskey, welcomed into the family's gift hierarchy despite his first Christmas with us. David and Claire collected their bounty, matching smartwatches, a luxury spa getaway, and kitchen gadgets they'd requested. Dad handed David a set of custom golf clubs. "For those hospital networking events, son." Mom and Dad exchanged their gifts, diamond earrings for her, a leather jacket for him clearly coordinated for maximum impact. Round after round, the presents dwindled, each one a reminder of the family's priorities. I waited, my fingers tracing the edge of my mug, for my name to be called. Extended family members, cousins, aunts, uncles exchanged their gifts, the room buzzing with comparisons and exclamations. Even Grandma Margaret, whose letter had brought me here, received a new robe, slippers, and framed family photos, her smile radiant. But as the area beneath the tree emptied, leaving only scraps of wrapping paper, a cold realization settled over me. There was nothing for me. The Christmas morning gift exchange in the Harper family's Seattle home had left a wound that pulsed with familiar pain. Sitting on the window bench, watching my family mom, dad, David, Sophia, and their loved ones clutch their carefully chosen presents while I received nothing, I felt the sting of being erased. 80 million? Dad finally managed, his voice a mix of shock and skepticism. Your computer project did this? The word project stung, echoing years of dismissal. But I held my ground. It's not a project, Dad. It's a company, one that's changing lives. Grandma Margaret's face lit up, her eyes shining with pride. That's my Emmy, she said, her voice trembling with joy. I always knew you were building something extraordinary. Her words wrapped around me like a warm blanket, a contrast to the family's stunned silence. Mom recovered first, her voice shifting to a revisionist tone. Well, we always encouraged your tech interests, didn't we? I remember telling everyone how clever you were with computers. The lie was blatant. She'd once suggested I take up painting instead. But I let it pass, my focus on the truth I'd come to share. David, still holding the document, spoke up, his tone edged with competition. This is legitimate? You built a company worth this much? How did we not know? The question hung heavy, and I answered simply, no one asked. The words landed like a quiet thunderclap, a truth they couldn't dodge. When I'd tried to share my work hackathon wins, podcast milestones conversation had always shifted to David's surgeries or Sophia's art. Sophia, quieter than the others, reached for the magazine, her eyes wide. That's really you on the cover, she said, a note of awe in her voice. I nodded, meeting her gaze, seeing a flicker of something new, respect perhaps, or curiosity. I wasn't done. There's more, I said, sliding out the press release. In honor of Grandma Margaret, NovaTech is donating $2 million to Seattle's public schools to fund tech education for underserved students. The announcement goes public next week. Grandma's eyes filled with tears, her hand reaching for mine. Oh, Emmy, for the kids. Your grandpa would be so proud. Her words, rooted in the love that had brought me here, were the only ones that truly mattered. The rest of the table erupted in a mix of reactions. Dad switched to business mode, asking about investment opportunities and growth projections, his lawyer's mind already calculating. Mom doubled down on her narrative, insisting she'd always seen my potential. David's competitive edge surfaced, comparing his hospital's funding to NovaTech's valuation. Extended family members, silent until now, suddenly found me fascinating, their questions tinged with opportunism. I answered calmly, neither inflating nor downplaying NovaTech's success. This wasn't about proving superiority. It was about being seen for who I was, a woman who'd turned her passion into impact, who'd built a life of purpose despite their indifference. The revelation wasn't just about numbers. It was about reclaiming my place, not in their hierarchy, but in my own story. I thought of the prototype in my room, a health monitor for Grandma, and the gifts I'd brought for each family member, tailored to their lives. I'd been forgotten in their gift exchange, but I'd come prepared to give, a reflection of the heart I'd poured into my work. As the brunch continued, the family's reactions settled into predictable patterns, but something had shifted. The Harper hierarchy, so rigid for so long, had cracked, if only slightly. I felt a quiet power, not from their shock, but from standing in my truth. I'd built NovaTech, Code and Courage, a nonprofit mentoring young women, an empire of impact that stretched far beyond Seattle. Whether they valued it or not, I knew my worth. As I looked at Grandma Margaret, her pride a beacon, I felt ready for whatever came next, not to change them, but to honor the woman I'd become, radiant in a light they could no longer ignore. The craftsman-style house, with its twinkling Christmas lights, and the scent of Mom's French toast casserole wafting from the kitchen, was a stage where I'd always been a background player. But as we gathered for brunch around the oak dining table, the weight of that exclusion sparked something new, not anger, but resolve. I was Emily Harper, 35, a woman who'd built an $80 million tech empire in Silicon Valley, and I was done being invisible. With Grandma Margaret's love as my anchor, I decided it was time to reveal the truth of who I'd become. Not to win their approval, but to stand fully in my light, whether they saw it or not. The brunch table was a flurry of chatter, David recounting his hospital's latest triumphs, Sophia sharing wedding venue photos, Mom and Dad beaming with pride. I sat quietly, my hands resting on a slim envelope in my lap, its contents a testament to the life I'd built. Inside were 2 items: a Forbes magazine with my face on the cover, and a document detailing a $90 million acquisition offer for NovaTech, my company that used AI to transform education. I'd also brought a press release announcing a $2 million donation to Seattle's public schools, a gift in the Harper family name inspired by Grandma Margaret's belief in me. These weren't props for a performance, they were pieces of my truth, forged through years of work in a world that had dismissed me as the middle child who tinkered with computers. As Dad raised his mimosa for a toast, his voice warm with tradition, I felt the moment arrive. "To family and success," he proclaimed. To David's surgical wing, to Sophia and Ethan's engagement, to another prosperous Harper year. The clink of glasses echoed, but my name was absent, as it had been in the gift exchange. I cleared my throat, my voice steady despite the racing of my heart. "Since we're celebrating achievements," I said, "I'd like to share something too." The table fell silent, a rare pause in the Harper Symphony, their eyes turning to me with a mix of curiosity and unease. I placed the envelope on the table and slid out the Forbes magazine, turning it to face them. The headline read, "AI's Education Revolutionaries. How Emily Harper's NovaTech is Transforming Schools." My photo, confident and poised, stared back at them, a stranger to the family who'd never asked about my life. "I've been meaning to tell you about my work," I continued, my tone even but firm. "NovaTech, the company I co-founded 6 years ago, uses AI to create personalized learning plans for students with dyslexia, ADHD, and other challenges. We've partnered with school districts in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles, and we're valued at $80 million. I paused, letting the words settle, then placed the acquisition offer beside the magazine, the $90 million figure bold on the page. "We're considering this offer, though I'm leaning towards staying independent and expanding globally." The silence was thick, a stunned stillness replacing the usual hum of conversation. Mom's mouth opened, then closed, her eyes darting to the magazine as if it might be a prank. Dad stared, his mimosa forgotten, the numbers sinking in. David picked up the acquisition document, his surgeon's precision scanning every line, his brow furrowed in disbelief. The revelation of my empire, the Harper family's Christmas brunch, had shifted the air in the Seattle craftsman-style home, the oak dining table now a stage where the hierarchy that once confined me had cracked. Her eyes widened, the tool aligning perfectly with her fast-paced career. For David, I presented beta access to a physician scheduling platform NovaTech had developed. "It optimizes hospital shifts, reducing burnout for doctors like you," I told him, watching his competitive edge give way to curiosity. For Sophia, I gave a digital art suite, designed to enhance her creative process. "It includes AI tools for sketching and 3D rendering, plus a platform to showcase your work online," I said, her fingers tracing the envelope, as she nodded, a rare moment of connection. For Claire, David's wife, I offered a personalized wellness app, tracking nutrition and stress with her busy life in mind. For Ethan, Sophia's fiancé, a career networking tool to connect with industry leaders, a nod to his ambitions. For Lily and Max, my niece and nephew, I created educational tech accounts with substantial deposits for future learning, ensuring they'd have access to coding camps and STEM programs. Each gift was a piece of my heart, a reflection of how deeply I'd thought about their lives, even from afar. Finally, I turned to Grandma Margaret, whose pride during my revelation had been my anchor. I handed her a small box, the prototype health monitor I'd designed at NovaTech. "This tracks your heart rate and alerts doctors if anything's wrong," I said softly. "It's to keep you safe, because you've always been my safe place." Her eyes filled with tears, her hand squeezing mine, her love a beacon in the room. The gifts weren't just technology, they were solutions, born from the same passion that built NovaTech, the same heart that shared stories on code and courage. They were proof that I saw my family, even when they hadn't seen me. The contrast was stark. Hours earlier, they'd forgotten me in their gift exchange. Their oversight, a symbol of years of neglect. Yet here I was, giving thoughtfully. Not out of spite, but because it was who I was, a creator, a problem solver, a woman who cared deeply. The silence that followed was profound, the weight of my generosity settling over the table. Grandma Margaret broke it, her voice trembling. "Emmy, you've always had the biggest heart." Her words were a balm, healing the raw edges of the morning's pain. The others murmured thanks, their reactions a mix of awe and discomfort, as if my gifts forced them to confront their own oversight. To deepen the moment, I shared one more gift, not for an individual, but for the community. "I'm hosting a free coding workshop for Seattle kids next week," I announced. "It's through NovaTech's nonprofit arm, and I'd love for Lily and Max to join." The workshop, inspired by my own childhood struggles to be seen, would teach coding to underserved youth, with scholarships for those who showed promise. It was a way to give back to the city that shaped me, to ensure no child felt invisible as I had. The family's eyes widened, the scope of my impact sinking in. Even David, usually guarded, nodded in approval, a rare acknowledgement. The Forbes magazine with my face on the cover, the $90 million acquisition offer for NovaTech, and the $2 million donation to Seattle's schools in Grandma Margaret's honor, lay before my family: Mom, Dad, David, Sophia, and their loved one, each item a testament to the woman I'd become. Their reactions, a mix of shock, revisionism, and opportunism, were predictable, yet the moment wasn't about their response. As the brunch wound down, I felt a quiet power. The gifts weren't about outshining anyone. They were about showing who I was, a woman who built solutions, who gave without expecting return, who carried love even through pain. The Harper hierarchy, with its rigid measures of worth, couldn't contain me anymore. I'd built a life in Silicon Valley. NovaTech, my podcast, my nonprofit rooted in purpose and connection. My chosen family, friends like Claire, saw me for my heart, not my resume. Here, in this house, I'd given my family a chance to see me too. Not as the middle child they'd overlooked, but as a woman who'd forged her own path. Looking at Grandma Margaret, her pride radiant, I knew I'd done what I came to do. The gifts were my truth, a bridge between the girl I'd been and the woman I was. Whether my family crossed that bridge was up to them, but I no longer needed their validation. I was enough, my light undeniable, my empire a testament to a heart that gave, even when forgotten. It was about standing in my truth, claiming the space I'd been denied for so long. As the brunch plates were cleared and the chatter resumed, I felt a quiet resolve. I was Emily Harper, 35, a Silicon Valley CEO who'd built an $80 million company, a podcast host inspiring thousands, and a mentor to young women in tech. But more than that, I was a woman who gave from the heart, even when forgotten. With Grandma Margaret's love as my anchor, I decided it was time to share the gifts I'd brought, not to prove my worth, but to show the depth of my care, a reflection of the life I'd built beyond their indifference. The giftless Christmas morning had been a wound, a stark reminder of my place in the Harper hierarchy. While my family exchanged designer handbags, custom golf clubs, and luxury spa vouchers, I'd received nothing, not even a card. The pain of being erased was raw, echoing years of being overlooked as the middle child whose coding passion was dismissed as a quirk. Yet, as I sat at the brunch table, the sting of exclusion gave way to clarity. I hadn't come to Seattle to compete in their economy of achievements. I was here for Grandma Margaret, whose heartfelt letter had called me home, and for myself, to honor the woman I'd become. In my suitcase, tucked beside the prototype health monitor for Grandma, were gifts I'd crafted for each family member, not out of obligation, but from a place of understanding their lives. These weren't last-minute tokens. They were extensions of my work at NovaTech, solutions tailored to their needs, a testament to the heart I poured into everything I created. As the family lingered over coffee, I excused myself briefly, retrieving a small stack of envelopes from my room, the storage space that had once been my sanctuary, now piled with boxes that erased my childhood. Back at the table, I stood, my voice calm but resolute. I brought something for everyone, I said, the words drawing curious glances. I was waiting for the right moment. The room quieted, their eyes on me, a mix of anticipation and unease. I began with Dad, handing him an envelope. "For you, a custom-designed smart home security system," I explained. "It integrates with your legal work, encrypting sensitive documents and streamlining your home office." His lawyer's mind, always calculating, softened as he read the details, a flicker of genuine interest crossing his face. For Mom, I offered a digital event planning platform, tailored to her marketing expertise. It organizes campaigns and client events remotely, with AI-driven analytics to track engagement, I said. The Christmas brunch in the Harper family's Seattle home had been a turning point, a moment where the carefully constructed hierarchy that had long confined me began to fracture. Revealing NovaTech me $80 million tech empire and sharing personalized gifts for each family member had shifted the air in the craftsman-style dining room, the oak table bearing witness to a truth I'd carried for years. We made plans for her to visit me in San Francisco, a trip I'd arrange with care, ensuring her comfort. Her presence in my life was a gift, a reminder that family wasn't defined by blood alone, but by those who saw your heart. The most unexpected connection came from my 14-year-old cousin, Lily's friend Emma, who found me during a lull in the holiday chaos. "I want to learn coding," she said, her voice hesitant. "But my dad says it's not a real career for girls." The words echoed my own childhood, and I felt a surge of purpose. We sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, as I showed her basic coding concepts, setting up free resources she could access at home. "Don't let anyone limit your dreams," I told her, handing her my email. "I'll send you info on coding camps, and if your parents won't pay, I'll cover it." Her eyes lit up, a spark I recognized from my younger self. And I knew this moment was part of my legacy, lifting others as I'd been lifted. Back in Silicon Valley, my chosen family friends like Claire, my Code and Courage co-producer, were my true home. Claire had been my rock, her late-night calls pulling me through moments of doubt. When I called her that night, the storage room that was once my bedroom feeling colder than ever, she listened as I poured out the day's events. "You stood in your truth, Emily," she said. "That's your power." Her words grounded me, a reminder of the community I'd built: colleagues at NovaTech, mentees at my nonprofit, listeners who found strength in my podcast. They saw me, not for my resume, but for my heart, a contrast to the Harper family's conditional love. To heal the deeper wounds, I began working with a therapist in San Francisco, a step I'd avoided for years. She helped me untangle the threads of the Harper hierarchy, the voices that whispered I wasn't enough. Through our sessions, I learned to name the patterns: favoritism, emotional neglect that had shaped me. Not to blame, but to understand. Grandma Margaret's stories, shared in our weekly calls, added context, revealing how my father's own childhood had been marked by similar pressures. "Understanding doesn't excuse," she said, "but it helps you heal." The therapy wasn't about fixing my family. It was about freeing myself, replacing their voices with the truth of my worth. Inspired by this journey, I founded a scholarship fund through NovaTech, supporting young women in tech who faced doubt from their families. Named after Grandma Margaret, it offered coding, boot camps, mentorship, and financial aid, ensuring no one felt invisible as I had. The fund's launch, announced on Code and Courage, drew letters from girls across the country, their stories echoing mine. Each one strengthened my resolve to be the mirror I'd needed as a child, reflecting potential back to those who doubted themselves. As Christmas Day faded, I knew I'd leave Seattle early, not out of anger, but from a clear-eyed recognition that my true home was in San Francisco, with those who valued me. The Harper family had glimpsed my light, but their capacity to fully see me was limited. Sophia's question in the kitchen opened a door to a new sisterly bond, one we'd nurture through video calls. Grandma Margaret's love remained my foundation, her visit to San Francisco a promise of deeper connection. I was Emily Harper, 35, a Silicon Valley CEO, a podcast host inspiring thousands with Code and Courage, and a mentor to young women in tech. The Forbes cover, the $90 million acquisition offer, and the $2 million donation to Seattle schools in Grandma Margaret's honor were not just achievements, they were declarations of a life built on my terms. Beyond the shadows of my parents, Laura and Richard, my brother David, and my sister Sophia. My parents and David might never fully understand, but I no longer needed them to. I'd redefined family, finding it in the people who saw my heart, in the work that lifted others, in the truth I'd claimed. As I packed my suitcase, the prototype for Grandma safe in its box, I felt free not from the past, but from its power to define me. As the day unfolded, their reactions shock, revisionism, and cautious respect revealed the limits of the Harper family's vision, but also opened a door to something new. With Grandma Margaret's love as my anchor, I began to redefine what family meant, finding my true home not in the house where I'd grown up, but in the connections that saw me for who I was. The aftermath of my revelation was a tapestry of awkward and surreal moments, each interaction a mirror reflecting the Harper family's struggle to reconcile the woman I'd become with the invisible middle child they'd always known. Dad, ever the lawyer, cornered me on the back porch, his questions about NovaTech's venture capital and expansion plans revealing a mix of pride and opportunism. "You should have come to me for startup advice," he said, conveniently forgetting his dismissal of my coding as a hobby. I smiled, my voice gentle but firm. "I found the doors I needed, Dad, and learned to open them myself." His expression flickered, torn between admiration and the discomfort of realizing my success had unfolded without his guidance. Mom, meanwhile, adopted a narrative of unwavering support, insisting she'd always champion my tech dreams. "I bought you that coding book when you were 12, she claimed, rewriting history as she rearranged Christmas cookies. The book had been a gift from Grandma Margaret, but I let the revision stand, recognizing it as her attempt to claim a piece of my triumph. David's reaction was more complex, a dance of disbelief and subtle rivalry. By the fireplace, he lowered his voice, his surgeon's precision probing. "You're really worth all that? I mean, that sweater alone looks like $1,000. I nodded, keeping my tone even. "I'm financially comfortable, David, but NovaTech's about impact, not just money." He processed this, his competitive nature wrestling with reluctant respect, a shift from the brother who'd once seen me as drifting. Sophia, quieter than the others, sought me out in the kitchen, her eyes searching. "Were we really that bad to you?" she asked, her directness catching me off guard. I paused, choosing my words carefully. "Not bad, Sophia, just absent. I was invisible, even to myself sometimes." She nodded, her silence heavy with realization, and for the first time, I saw a bridge forming a chance to know the adult Sophia, not just the sister who'd shone brighter in our parents' eyes. Grandma Margaret remained my North Star. Her pride during brunch, her tears at the donation in her honor, were a balm to the wounds of the giftless Christmas morning. Later, in the quiet of the living room, she took my hand, her voice soft. "You've always been my Emmy, shining in your own way. Your grandpa would have loved this." Her words, rooted in a love that never wavered, reminded me why I'd come home. The Christmas day in the Harper family's Seattle home had been a journey of reckoning, a tapestry woven with moments that laid bare the truths I'd carried for years. The revelation of NovaTech me $80 million tech empire, the heartfelt gifts I'd given despite receiving none, and the redefinition of family through Grandma Margaret's love and Sophia's tentative openness had shifted the foundation of the craftsman-style house where I'd grown up. We'd create new traditions cooking together, coding with local kids at a NovaTech workshop, watching the Golden Gate Bridge light up at duskones rooted in connection, not comparison. The Harper house, with its oak table and rigid expectations, would remain a part of my story, but it no longer held the power to shape my path. My work with NovaTech deepened in the months that followed. Inspired by my Seattle experience, I launched a free AI-driven app for underserved students, offering personalized learning tools to bridge educational gaps. The app, piloted in Oakland and Chicago, drew praise from teachers and parents, its impact a reminder of why I'd started NovaTech to ensure no child felt overlooked as I had. Code and Courage grew too, its listener base swelling to millions, each episode a chance to share stories of resilience. I interviewed young women from my scholarship fund, their voices echoing my own journey, their dreams a testament to the power of being seen. The podcast's success led to a book deal, a memoir I titled Light Unseen, weaving my story of overcoming the Harper hierarchy with lessons for others. Writing it was cathartic, a way to honor the girl who'd coded in secret and the woman who'd claimed her place. Therapy became a cornerstone of my healing, a space to unravel the threads of my family's dynamics. My therapist helped me name the pattern's favoritism, emotional neglect that had shaped my self-perception, not to dwell on blame, but to reclaim my narrative. Grandma Margaret's weekly calls added depth, her stories of my father's pressured childhood shedding light on his rigid expectations. Breaking patterns means seeing them first, she said, her wisdom a guide. Through this work, I learned to silence the old voices that whispered I wasn't enough, replacing them with the truth. I was radiant, my worth intrinsic, my life a canvas of impact. The scholarship fund, named after Grandma Margaret, became my proudest legacy. It supported hundreds of young women in tech, offering coding, boot camps, mentorship, and financial aid. Letters poured in from recipients: a girl in Detroit who'd built her first app, a teen in Miami who'd won a hackathon, each one a reminder that my story was bigger than me. I shared these letters on Code and Courage, urging listeners to support the fund to be mirrors for those who felt invisible. The fund's annual gala, held in San Francisco, was a celebration of potential, with Grandma Margaret as the guest of honor, her presence a bridge between my past and present. As the next Christmas approached, I stood in my San Francisco apartment, the city skyline glittering outside, and felt a profound peace. The Harper family was a work in progress. Mom's calls more frequent but still awkward. Dad's questions still business-focused. David's distance, a quiet acceptance. Sophia and I built our bond through monthly video calls, her wedding plans a topic we now shared with ease. Grandma Margaret's visit was the heart of my holiday, her laughter filling my home as we baked cookies and coded a simple game together. These connections, imperfect but honest, were enough. I'd learned to hold space for what was possible while releasing what wasn't. As I packed my suitcase in the storage room that was once my bedroom, the Christmas lights outside casting a soft glow through the frosty window, I felt a profound clarity. I was Emily Harper, 35, a Silicon Valley CEO, a podcast host of Code and Courage, inspiring millions, and a mentor to young women in tech. My greatest gift was the freedom to live authentically, to shine without dimming my light for others' comfort. To anyone feeling unseen by family, by the world, I'd say this: your worth isn't tied to their recognition. Build your empire, not of wealth, but of truth, of connections that lift you, of a life that reflects your heart. Share your story, as I did on Code and Courage, because you're not alone. My journey, from the invisible girl in Seattle to the woman who claimed her truth, is proof that the light within you is enough. As I look toward the future, NovaTech thriving, my book in progress, and my chosen family by my side, I knew I'd found my true home not in a house, but in the life I'd built, radiant and unapologetic. This Christmas wasn't about changing my parents, Laura and Richard, my brother David, or even Sophia. It was about claiming my truth, a gift I gave myself that no one could take away. As I prepared to return to San Francisco, I knew my greatest achievement wasn't the empire I'd built, but the unshakable knowledge of my worth, a light that would guide me forward, no matter who saw it. The Harper family's reaction to my revelations had been a mirror, reflecting both their limitations and the possibilities for new connections. Dad's business-minded questions, Mom's revisionist claims of support, and David's competitive probing showed a family bound by a hierarchy that valued achievements over authenticity. Sophia's quiet acknowledgement in the kitchen, asking if they'd been that bad to me, was a crack in that wall, a bridge to a sister I hope to know as an adult. Grandma Margaret's pride, radiant and unwavering, was the heartbeat of my visit, her love the reason I'd returned. Yet, as I stood in the storage room, the boxes of my childhood awards buried in neglect, I realized that my true home wasn't this Seattle house. It was in San Francisco, with my chosen family friends like Claire, colleagues at NovaTech, mentees at my nonprofit who saw me for my heart, not my resume. This realization wasn't bitter. It was liberating. A declaration that I could love my family while building a life where I was fully seen. As I drove to the airport, the Space Needle fading in the rearview mirror, I felt lighter, unburdened by the need for the Harper family's validation. The giftless Christmas morning, the dismissive comments, the erasure of my bedroom, they were wounds, but they no longer defined me. I'd stood in my truth, revealing NovaTech's impact, from transforming education for students with learning differences to donating $2 million to Seattle's schools in Grandma Margaret's name. I'd given gifts that reflected my CareSmart home systems for Dad, art tools for Sophia, a health monitor for grandmaids despite their oversight. Those acts weren't about proving my worth. They were about living it. A reflection of the woman who'd built an empire on purpose, not applause. Back in San Francisco, I invited Grandma Margaret and Sophia to join me for the next Christmas, a decision that felt like planting a new seed. Grandma's visit was a promise of joy, her stories of Seattle's past a thread connecting my roots to my future. Sophia, newly open to connection, agreed to come with her husband, Ethan, their presence, a chance to build a relationship grounded in who we were now, not who we'd been as children. Emily Harper's story is a poignant odyssey of resilience, self-discovery, and the quiet power of living one's truth. At 35, Emily returned to her childhood home in Seattle for Christmas, carrying not just a suitcase, but the weight of 6 years away, and an empire she'd built in silence. The Harper family, ensconced in their craftsman-style home aglow with Christmas lights, was a world where love was a currency earned through achievements. The aftermath was a mosaic of change and continuity. Sophia's question, "Were we really that bad to you?" opened a door to a new sisterly bond, nurtured through video calls. Grandma Margaret's love deepened, her planned visit to San Francisco a promise of joy. Dad and Mom's awkward attempts at connection, more frequent calls, but still tinged with their old lens, showed their limits, while David's distance remained a quiet acceptance. Emily left Seattle early, not in anger, but with the clarity that her true home was in San Francisco, with her chosen family friends like Claire, colleagues at NovaTech, mentees who saw her heart. Therapy helped her untangle the Harper hierarchy's wounds, replacing old voices of doubt with the truth of her radiance. Her scholarship fund, named for Grandma Margaret, empowered young women in tech, each letter from a recipient a reminder of her impact. Her memoir, Light Unseen, born from code and courage, became a beacon for those feeling unseen, a testament to her journey from invisibility to empowerment. Emily's story offers a profound lesson. Your worth is not defined by others' recognition, but by the truth you live and the light you share. In a world that often measures value through external validation, likes, promotions, or family approval, Emily's journey reminds us that true power lies in authenticity. She didn't need the Harper family's gifts or praise to shine. She built an empire of purpose, from NovaTech's educational revolution to her nonprofit's mentorship, because she believed in her vision. Her resilience in the face of neglect, her generosity despite exclusion, and her choice to redefine family on her terms teach us that we can choose who and what shapes our story. The pain of being unseen is universal, but so is the potential to rise above it, to craft a life that reflects our deepest truths. For today's audience, living in a fast-paced, comparison-driven world, Emily's lesson is a call to action. First, identify your passion, the spark, like Emily's love for coding, that lights you up and pursue it relentlessly, even if others don't understand. Start small, as she did in a Palo Alto apartment, and let your work speak for itself. Second, seek your chosen family, those who see your heart, whether friends, mentors, or communities like Emily's podcast listeners. These connections, not blood ties, often provide the truest support. Third, give generously, even when it's hard. Emily's gifts to her family, despite their neglect, were acts of strength, showing that love can transcend pain. Finally, heal your wounds through reflection, whether through therapy, journaling, or storytelling, as Emily did with her memoir. Name the patterns that hold you back, and rewrite them with the truth of your worth. In practice, this means setting boundaries with those who diminish you, as Emily did by leaving Seattle early and investing in relationships that uplift you. It means sharing your story through a blog, a podcast, or a conversation to connect with others who feel unseen, building a community of resilience. It means creating something meaningful, whether a project, a cause, or a kind act that reflects your values. Emily's life, from the girl coding in secret to the woman who stood radiant in her truth, is a reminder that you are enough, your light undeniable. As you navigate your own journey, let her story inspire you to live authentically, to build your empire of truth, and to shine, not for others, but for the beautiful, unshakable you. Laura and Richard, her parents, were titans of success, Laura, a marketing director, Richard, a corporate lawyer whose pride shone brightest for Emily's older brother David, a celebrated surgeon, and younger sister Sophia, an artistic prodigy. Emily, the middle child, was the shadow in their hierarchy, her passion for coding dismissed as a quirky hobby, her triumphs in tech competitions met with shrugs. Yet, in Silicon Valley, she'd forged NovaTech, an $80 million company using AI to transform education for students with learning differences, a podcast, Code and Courage, inspiring millions, and a nonprofit mentoring young women in tech. Her return, prompted by Grandma Margaret's heartfelt letter, was not a quest for approval, but a pilgrimage to stand in her truth, a journey that unfolded with pain, revelation, and profound growth. The Harper home, with its oak dining table and scent of cinnamon, was a stage where Emily's invisibility was starkly reaffirmed. From the moment she arrived, her mother's critical greeting, "You look thinner?" and her father's dismissive chuckle about tinkering with computers set the tone. Her old bedroom, now a storage room, was a physical erasure, while David's and Sophia's rooms remained shrines to their glory. At dinner, her attempts to share NovaTech's impact were drowned by talk of David's hospital wing and Sophia's wedding plans. The giftless Christmas morning was the deepest cut. While others unwrapped designer handbags and custom golf clubs, Emily received nothing. Her niece Lily's innocent question, "Didn't Aunt Emily get any presents?" exposing the family's oversight. The silence that followed, broken by her parents' flimsy excuses, was a wound that echoed years of neglect, a confirmation that Emily had never truly belonged in their hierarchy of worth. Yet, this pain became the crucible for Emily's transformation. At the Christmas brunch, she revealed her empire, placing a Forbes magazine with her face on the cover and a $90 million acquisition offer for NovaTech on the table. She announced a $2 million donation to Seattle's schools in Grandma Margaret's name, a tribute to the woman whose love had always seen her. The family's reactions, Dad's business queries, Mom's revisionist claims, David's competitive probing, Sophia's quiet awe were a mix of shock and self-interest. But Grandma Margaret's tearful pride was the only response that mattered. Emily's revelation wasn't about proving superiority. It was about claiming her space, a declaration that her worth wasn't tied to their recognition. Her gifts to the family: smart home systems for Dad, art tools for Sophia, a health monitor for Grandma, were acts of love, tailored to their lives despite their neglect, a stark contrast to the giftless morning. These gifts, like her coding workshop for Seattle kids, were extensions of her heart, a reflection of a woman who gave even when forgotten.